had this really awful script for a video written up. It was about my theories about how we value and criticize art. Essentially, it was my opinion on what is part of the artwork and what is not, and also, what is it like to experience an artwork. And all that was mixed in with a bit of discussion on death of the author and the cultural conversation surrounding various artworks. The script was rambling and repetitive, and made little to no sense. I found myself later catching up on all the Curio videos, and they told me about aggressive reading. I promptly abandoned my script. They said,
"Sometimes it's okay to know that the author of a piece doesn't have the intention you're talking about. If you can demonstrate that the reading of a piece of media you're putting forth has some value, then it's a good reading."
Those two sentences immediately convinced me that no, I don't actually have to put forward this grand framework that gives me and others permission to read media in a way that we want to. Actually, I can read media however I want. It just needs to be valuable. To me, to my audience, to anyone really. What matters is that I like games for my own reasons, unique to me, and I should express that. Seriously, by the way, go watch Curio's content. It's so good. Holy shit, do they make good content. So, what's this essay then? Well, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. Yet. I opened this document with no words in my brain, only inspiration. But I do know this. This essay is the next step. It's about what I'm free to do, now that I have this permission from myself to aggressively read meaning into things. I do not have to disregard authorial intent, but I may. I don't have to discard social context, but I also may. If I do this video right, if I truly say what I want to say, it'll serve as the thesis for my whole channel. I suppose I shall use this time, now that I have your attention, to tell you a bit about why I love games, and what I think their value is. I think there are three main reasons as to why I love games so much. I love how I can inhabit worlds in them. I love how they are full-blown Gesamtkunstwerks, German for a total work of art that encompasses many other art forms within it. And finally, I love them for how truly intimate they can be. Section 1, Inhabiting Worlds. In talking about games and the worlds that they depict, it is exceedingly and increasingly difficult not to step on the toes of Jacob Geller, my favourite video essayist and YouTuber. So, I hope to take a slightly more personal approach to this. Game worlds are simply richer to me than the worlds of other mediums. And I believe that is because you happen across locations in a way that you simply cannot in other mediums. Books, for example, are always describing the setting with exactly as much detail as is needed to convey a certain idea. Rooms are not simply small. They must be small for the purpose of being claustrophobic, or perhaps intimate, or isolating. I feel more that other mediums sell the illusion of a world. This is not to diminish them, however, as that illusion is often perfectly constructed to suspend one's disbelief entirely. No, what I mean to reveal here is that in other mediums, the author must carve out the setting for each scene, and in doing so, can always present the world exactly how they want it to be perceived. In games, however, the designer must simply allow the world to be, to exist as it is, and to allow it to be seen from its many angles. The room may be small simply because it is a small room in a small house, and there is a certain freedom that comes from this ambivalence of place. Because of this, settings in games read to me as almost kinder places. They are spaces that are made for you to experience firsthand, rather than through the lens of some other purpose. They are also made for you to come to your own conclusions on. Game spaces are truly inhabited by their structures, people, and creatures, in a way that other mediums are only haunted by. The first time I truly became aware of this was when I was playing Dark Souls 3. It's a common trope in video games to have that moment when you step out onto a balcony of some kind and are met with a beautiful vista of the world. And on my first playthrough, I was met with just that, a totally arresting look at this colossal world. But what surprised me is that this vista only got more and more beautiful to me each time I played the game. On some playthroughs, I spend up to 10 minutes simply casting my gaze out across Lothric. And that's because this particular view lets you see almost every location in the game, The game doesn't look so linear from up here. It looks like a coherent, proper world, one that has lost none of its scale, but no longer does it feel like a Colossus before me. It's a view where I can happen across each place with my binoculars and marvel at each pathway I may take. I find that the world of Lothric exists once in the game and again in my mind, where when I close my eyes, I can move through its entirety. I have a mental map of every single area in that game. It's almost as if I've lived there. NaissancE and Manifold Garden take scale to its maximum. No written description could ever capture the feeling of immensity that I feel in these two games. They depict a world so brain-crushingly huge that it seems necessary for the player's sanity that these moments are interspersed by smaller rooms where you cannot see the outside. But even when you are in these tight corridors, the mere memory of these voids cannot fit inside the subconscious. It spills over into your every thought, impossible to ignore. To the void outside, these hallways are no bigger than you are, which is to say, infinitely small. And if they have been so utterly swallowed by this endless expanse, then so must you have been. NaissancE especially made me feel like I was constantly happening upon the world, like I was walking along catwalks that no human had ever set foot on. I felt present as a mote of consciousness inside the facility. This imparts that feeling, yet again, that there is a world to be explored, regardless of whether you explore it. I nearly called this essay Loving Video Games, before I realized that not all games are indeed played on screens. In fact, one of my favorite games of all time is Dungeons & Dragons, the world-famous pen-and-paper tabletop role-playing game. And almost every time I have played D&D, I have been my group's Dungeon Master. And for those who don't know, the Dungeon Master is the one who creates the world that the players interact with. If the players go into the castle, the DM describes the corridors, the antechambers, and the throne room. And then the DM will play the role of the Queen when the players go talk to them, or the Guard when they talk to them. I, like many DMs, was enamored with the concept of world building. I would spend hours upon hours, days upon weeks creating maps, kingdoms, factions, cultures, histories, and religions. A world of my own. However, when my players sat down at the table with me while I was new at DMing, I realized my mistake. Game worlds exist only to be experienced. And when my players walked into the town in the kingdom I knew everything about, I was dumbfounded as to what the locals would say to them. I had failed to realize the grand macro worlds I was trying to create were made of hundreds of micro-level details. It is from the small interactions that the larger world begins to paint itself. The world must be shown to the players as thousands of tiny brushstrokes. Too large, and it loses its weight. Jacob Geller's video, The Intimacy of Everyday Objects, does a great job of looking at game worlds from this perspective. The way that small things hold meaning and tell stories. What is so enticing about this, however, is that it presents yet another way that games are fundamentally different from other mediums. Specifically, the way that the player can set their own pacing, and they can interact with these small little microcosms of stories for as long or as little as they like. I feel like I'm attempting to convince you that game worlds truly exist. And that is, of course, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Games taught me that although a physicist can define spaces irrespective of human perception, our brains are what construct the spaces we inhabit, and our minds need not adhere to such laws of nature. What I'm getting at here is that the human brain thinks of locations not as a collection of graphable points in space, but as a distorted map of ideas strung together in an abstract manner. From this reading, the worlds in games are places just as much as the room you are in now is a place. Both are areas with ideas strung together by our brains, and you can interact with both in meaningful ways. You are not just looking into the space as you might with other mediums. You are truly inside that space, because it is our mind that perceives location, not our bodies. Section 2. Gesamtkunstwerks. The first artworks I ever experienced were music. My mother was in a band whilst pregnant with me, and so I have quite literally been listening to music for my whole existence. Sadly, these days I find it difficult to just sit down and listen to music on its own terms. Streaming services like Spotify have turned music into a background thing. Matt Colville has a great video on how we buy vinyl in the digital age for the same reasons we buy candles in the age of light bulbs and LEDs. We buy candles not simply for light, but for the experience of a candle, and vinyl not just for music, but for the experience of putting on a record and just listening to it. Painting and sculpture are two mediums I wish I had more time for in my life. I went to the gallery the other day and was reminded how much I truly just love the look of paint on canvas. Photography and cinematography are two of my absolute favourite mediums. I think I have a decent natural eye for discerning tricks of framing and editing, despite having two left hands when I try to do it myself. I just love the way that every single element of each shot speaks so many volumes. Of course, this is true of all mediums, but I especially like how it works in these two. I also, absolutely, positively love writing. The fact that I have a YouTube channel where I make video essays should speak to this more than enough. I love these mediums for how utterly diverse they are. I love how they play with different senses, the way that they achieve similar thematic ends but produce fundamentally different pieces of art. Why does this sound like this? But more interestingly, notice how their thematic ends are amplified when placed in concert with each other. Notice how they become reflections and refractions of each other, like two mirrors placed opposite each other. The meaning is preserved, but placed in new geometries. The idea being conveyed can now be seen from more angles. Video games specifically are the closest things to a Gesamtkunstwerk I have encountered. As I said earlier, a Gesamtkunstwerk, God that's hard to say, is a total work of art. A piece that incorporates as many other art forms as it can. If mixing mediums can cause them to reflect the topic in new ways, to make it viewable from more angles. Video games place enough mirrors in the conceptual space to take the light of the topic and form a full hologram. Video games, when done well, can so completely and utterly surround an idea so that the central themes of an artwork are inescapable. They construct worlds in which the messages they attempt to convey are as fundamental as the fabric of reality they lie upon. Video games have the ability, if done well, to take full and utter control of their message. When their chisel is not sharp enough, they can switch to music to finish sculpting. And when the instruments fall out of tune, they may paint the notes to finish the score, and when the paint dries up, they can capture the canvas in a Polaroid shot. All these elements work together to create a truly unified whole, a perfect expression of some aspect of the human condition. I truly love this about games. Section 3. Games judge me. Finally, allow me to talk about what is truly my favourite aspect of games. Games have an uncanny ability to see me. When I engage with other media, I do so from a third-person perspective. The character did X and Y. But in games, I am the actor. I did X and Y. This sets the groundwork for a very important, fundamental difference between games and other media. One of the more important ideas in the essay that this video rose from the ashes of is that art is a conversation between audience and author. An artwork is a swirling pit of ideas, and when the audience happens upon it, it falls unto their lot to engage with those ideas, to react to them and to discern their own meaning, distinct from that of the reactions the author intended. Distinctly related, of course, but different nonetheless. This is where the artwork is made. The line I used is that art is authored twice, once when created and once when experienced. Remember that games are interactive. With other media, like books for example, if we look at it like a conversation, the author has to predict your questions and answers to their questions and answers. It would be like interviewing someone by giving them a worksheet of questions, then leaving the room. This is bad, of course. You can learn plenty about a person and their perspective in this way. But what I love about games is that they are not restricted by this. You might be thinking that this is just kicking the can down the street. Instead of having one distinct text that the audience has to react to, there are a few versions of the game. Still no active conversation, just a more complex worksheet. This isn't what I'm referring to, because games are emergent. Yes, a game designer has to write all the NPC responses before it's published, but they haven't foreseen every single choice you made in your specific order. No matter what, your playthrough of a game won't be identical to someone else's, and it won't be identical to the designer's intended playthrough. And these minor changes have significant effects on how the game is read. However much you may not realize it, these tiny differences in how the light lands on your character in just one certain situation or what have you, they colour your perception of the game. Games don't just simulate the conversation that other mediums can't engage in. They present a complete reversal of the system for interacting with media. You judge books, you judge movies, you judge music. You place the artwork in your heart and produce an appraisal. For games, however, you place your heart into them, and they are the ones that produce an appraisal of you. You may do with this appraisal what you like. It is yours now. You changed the game, and it has changed you. Hey there! Thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really appreciate it, especially since I'm still getting used to making longer essays. This is the part where I ask you to subscribe and share the video, and also where I thank my patrons. That's right, this tiny YouTuber has a Patreon now. If you join my Patreon at the $1 tier, you get access to my Discord, and also little mini videos where I show you a thing in my life. At the $3 tier, you get access to other random bits of writing that don't get put anywhere else. So, all my thanks goes to Toby, Paige Harvey, A Sheet of Orange, Ethan Trester, Kirby, Lycan, Cthulhu Sauce, and Graham Harris. Consider joining my Patreon in the link in the description.